It's a tropical flower, so it doesn't live over winter. So you have to, you have to buy it new every year and treat it as an annual here. This is the vine growing up. And these are, of course, bubblegum pink petunias from proven winners. They're the type of petunias that don't require pruning. Very cool. Yep. These are Nico blue hydrangeas, and they have to go in. These are non-hardy hydrangeas, and they have to go in the basement every year. Otherwise, they don't make it. I know, I've tried. These I make live over, but I have to drag them in the basement. These are Nico blue hydrangeas. But I think here's the best hydrangea right here. This is a quickfire. This is a quickfire hydrangea. It's a paniculata, which means it's a small leaf hydrangea. And there's lots of different paniculatas. But this starts to bloom in the middle of July. And you have flower all the way through the winter. So it turns, first it's white, then it turns pink, and then it stays like a rosy pink, and the flowers will stay on all winter. Yeah, it's very cool. And this is called Incrediball. This is an improvement on the Annabelle, which is the aberrancis hydrangea. And the improvement is that it has really stiff stems, so the big flowers don't make it flop. So this is called Incrediball. And I work with a garden designer on Wednesdays, and this is what we use. Quickfire and Incrediball, two fabulous hydrangeas, starting to bloom in July. And this is Betty Corning clematis. And this was named, I'm not sure who, but somebody named it after his wife. So it's Betty Corning clematis. Isn't that beautiful? And this blooms all summer also. And these down here are cuttings from my blue billow hydrangea. So you cut the little, you cut them off, you trim the leaves, you dip them in rooting compound, and then put them in potting soil. So each one of these is going to be a hydrangea. Aren't they cute? They're blue billow cuttings. And I'm going to show you what the blue billow looks like right over here. And a better example of the blue billow hydrangea is down in my shade garden. So all hydrangeas originated in Japan, from the mountainsides of Japan, and they prefer to be in shade. So here is your blue billow hydrangea just past blooming now. And in alkaline soil it's pink, in acid soil it's blue. So this is blue billow in alkaline soil. And isn't this sweet? Neelan Munson's grandmother gave me these. Isn't that adorable? I love them. And this was another gift, so I put little... So this is a double pink... Oh gosh. I'll think of it. And this is thyme. This was Chet's little cowboy boot. Then we'll go up here. Oh, and this is a geranium roseanne. And this geranium roseanne is a very nice geranium. It blooms all summer. It goes nice, I think, with the pink petunias. This is a different type of hydrangea called Pinky Winky. And you notice that the flower on this is a little different than the other one. This blooms later, though. This is just starting to bloom here. And this is thyme. Isn't that fabulous? There's a zinnia. That's an annual. This is a sedum. This is flowering tobacco. So flowering tobacco is called Nicotiana. And at night, and I don't know why, but in the evening, it emits this most luscious fragrance. So you plant it, put it right outside your bedroom. At night, you lie in the bed and the breeze comes over and you smell this fabulous fragrance. Not during the day. Isn't that interesting? It emits the smell at night. And this, I think, is the best sedum. This is called Autumn Joy sedum. And this sedum doesn't it look fabulous now? And then the flower part turns pink. And it stays, the flower then turns brown, but it stays on all winter. So this is what we call winter interest. You know, when you garden in New England, you do anything for winter interest. As up here, now this is called Strawberry Sunday hydrangea. And again, a different looking flower than the other ones. And this blooms a little later. This is just now starting, and it will turn pink also. And this is Senorita Rosalita Cleome. This Cleome right here has been designed to be shorter and fuller than the other Cleomes. That's a great plant. And what do you think that plant is in the center there? It's poisonous.
I don't know.
It's a castor bean plant. So if you don't like somebody, you can make some tea out of it and give it to them. So that make them sick. So you can't eat that plant. And let's see, this is not celosia. It's Leon got this for me. The other annual, the purple annual that's in there. I'll think of it. And then, of course, you go through here, more petunias. And these are my dahlias. I have over 100 dahlias, and I love them. These are beautiful pink dahlias.
Oh, gorgeous.
And these I have to dig up every fall and put in shavings. So you have to dig up the roots. They're tubers is what they're called. So you dig them up, you hose them off, and you cut off the flowers, and then you pack them in, well, some people say peat moss, but I think shavings, like wood shavings that I use in the horse stall, are better because you're not breathing in that peat moss and that dust. And look, if they come out fine.
Beautiful.
So, it's a beautiful flower, isn't it?
Yes.
And there's different types, like, look at this one. How fabulous. I love these flowers. So pretty. And that's what we have here. And this is, people always ask me about this smoke bush. Oh, and these are echinacea. So these are, are perennials. They come back each year. This is another type of a dahlia. Isn't that beautiful with the dark foliage?
Yeah.
I just love it. That's so pretty. I love my dahlias. Another quick-fire hydrangea. This is a smoke bush with a fabulous color. Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah.
I just love it. Very pretty. And then here, this is more blue billow. See, the blue billow is just about past here. But you can see that it was just vibrant with color. Oh, and here's the blue color. But the other thing is, you see how these leaves got dark? This plant does not want to be in full sun. It prefers partial shade. And this is, I have it in full sun back here. But so these were all started as little babies. And they were about this big when I started them. Yeah. More hydrangeas. These are pinky winkies. This is a fringe tree which has fabulous white flowers and fragrant in the spring. This is a red maple, and then over here. So this is oh, this is a weed. We won't look at that. Looks like actually it's gonna.
Thistle?
That's a thistle. So this is called Little Elf, and this is of the endless summer varieties.
Gorgeous.
And this comes back every year, beautiful. This is salvia, purple salvia. This salvia that was here was past. It's past. Interesting, this bloomed and that one didn't, and I can't tell you why.
Huh.
That's the way flowers are. And here's another hydrangea, and this is a pink Annabelle. You know how we saw the white? Well, this is a pink version of Annabelle, and this is called Invincibelle. Beautiful. I love it. There's Tippy asking for dinner. All right, let's walk over here. This is a beautiful plant, this Selectrum. Isn't this just light and airy? So
yeah.
This is called Selectrum, and the other name for this is meadow rue. Isn't that beautiful? I just love it. So this is taller, and I love the echo with the phlox. So the pink and the purple are the phlox. Oh, it's just beautiful. I love it. It's a great plant. I have to say, though, that this year, I think because of the wacky weather we've had, it's been the garden is not as brilliant. And this up here is ironweed, this really tall one up here. And, oh, those are phlox. Oh, there's your butterfly. Beautiful. Hi, how are you? Oh, I'm being videotaped in the garden. Oh, what do you have? Oh my goodness.
We thought you could use a
Well, we
flower.
thought since it was a garden party, we should bring
is it
something.
a
It's a hollyhock.
Oh, Thank you. Oh my God. Sorry, I've just been had a riding lesson.
Good to see you.
Good, yeah, we just were. This is my riding instructor, Lori Inglis.
Hi, nice to
Hi.
meet you.
Do you know Eric?
Warren Whitaker.
He's the person who's videotaping
Well,
all of
thank
us.
you.
Hi,
How are you?
Eric.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet
Doing
you.
it- We're not on video
Hello.
now, are we?
Yes, we are. He's videotaping.
Oh my gosh, this what color? Where did you get the color?
Isn't that pretty? I thought you could use it.
I love hollyhocks. Oh, they're so
And it's
beautiful.
kind of,
I want to steal his because he has some really beautiful ones. Every time I go down there, I say, I want those seeds, I want those seeds. It's called plant lust, is what they say.
The thing is, I need to support mine somehow because they get
Yeah,
so
they
tall,
do, I
they
know.
tip over.
You know, I had some pink ones like that right here, and they converted to yellow.
Is that right?
They go back to what the hybrid was, I guess. But this is perfect. I know just where I'm putting it. Oh, I love it. Thank you.
you're welcome.
You know how to make me happy. Right? I know. Very sweet. Oh, I love it. Oh, gosh. Very nice. Thank you.
Tipping over.
It'll be all right. Yeah. You can tell we have a dog, all the spots on the lawn.
Right.
So Leon, I think, is cooking.
Oh.
And we're just going to finish videotaping. I guess this is going to be part of the Falls Village history.
It might be.
The garden is just spectacular.
It's coming. It's a little different than usual.
You got a lot of rain this year.
Wacky year. The
Yeah,
rain.
but it's just
It's coming.
beautiful.
Like these flocks haven't opened yet, so. And you know, this is the patio that Leon made for me. This is actually quite unusual. This is Goshen schist stone. So when it comes out, when they
used for my
mine
patio,
it,
too.
he did.
I love
And
it.
when it comes out in flat sheets. And I think the only place you can buy it is in Goshen, Massachusetts.
Right.
It's stone that is very peculiar just to that one area.
Yeah, and when the sun hits it and you see it glistening.
I love it.
Over there.
Leon Harris, come tell us about.
Start the fire.
All right, tell us.
This is schist from Goshen, Mass.
Yes, I love it.
Warren's whole terrace,
Sure
including the
is.
walls, is made out of that.
I
Oh, it's
love it.
beautiful.
I love it.
And when the sun comes out and it shines on the whole thing. And
Beautiful. And he was made it in the shape of a flower for me. How do you like that? I came home from work and there it was. And I went and bought these great little cushions for these seats and we never use them. You know why? Because you got to take them in. Right? So, all right, we'll finish the garden, honey. All right, we'll be right with you. Go and see Chrissy and her boat. Oh, yeah, they're indoors, yeah. Just make yourself at home. All right, so look at this, Dada. Isn't that just beautiful? I love these.
I didn't bring your playmate.
And this is a dwarf Alberta spruce. This is my favorite tree. And people don't like them, and I love them. And they're zone 3, and the deer don't eat them, and they're green year-round. It is my absolute favorite tree. It's called dwarf Alberta spruce, and real gardeners, I hear, don't like them because everybody uses them. But I think they're beautiful. Look at that. Isn't that gorgeous? And when I had my garden tour last year, I probably shouldn't say this, one of the famous gardeners said to me, real gardeners don't use petunias. I said, really? Look at that. Look at my cowboy boots. My dance class gave them to me. Aren't they cute? And every year I have a party out here and we dance on the lawn. That's sweet, isn't it? Oh, look, here's a dahlia just opening here. Oh, beautiful. I love it. Look at this. Oh, and here the hibiscus is now opening. The other thing that happened this year is hardly any Japanese beetles. And we went out and bought that beneficial nematode spray. This is for people who are frantic about Japanese beetles because they eat everything. We put it all over the lawn. The lawn has to be 60 degrees, and it's a bacteria that goes down and eats the larvae. And you know what? We've hardly had any Japanese beetles. So it's a natural way to get rid of Japanese beetles, because of course you can't use 7 because it's poisonous. So, all right, that's beautiful. Okay, here we go, over here. This is a magnolia tree that Leon gave me. Another smoke bush. So that's one section of it. Now here we come over here. So these are all shrubs, more hydrangeas. This is an interesting plant. It's called Calacanthus, and it has little tiny pink flowers on it. Isn't that a great shrub? just starting to open. Yep, very nice. And then here is the Weigela. This is the best plant, another fabulous shrub, the 9-bark. Look at the color of this.
Yeah.
Fabulous. And these flowers are pink in the spring. And now they're like cherry red, but they're a beautiful color. Look at this echinacea. And this is just about to open, another dahlia. This is Joe Pye weed. It's kind of gotten crazy here. Echinacea. Oh, more geranium roseanne. This is nepeta. This is a really fabulous, it's catnip, and it's very hardy and it blooms all summer. This is going to be a beautiful aster when it opens, a beautiful pink aster. This is a fall plant. And this is echinops, the balls. These are bright blue when they open. See, it's starting to open?
Yeah.
Isn't that great? How about this color here? So this is phlox. Petunias. This is Carolina sweet shrub. Beautiful plant. Isn't that beautiful? Blooms all summer. Really nice. And this is more 9-bark. This is a willow I'm thinking about taking out of here, but because look at, I have my little tree in there. That's all covered up now. I think I'm going to cut these back. But this is more of the Incrediball hydrangea. More quick fire. So I have to tell you that I work for a garden designer, and we had a client who wanted pots, these big pots with flowers in them. So every year we put the hydrangeas in the pots, and at the end of the summer she'd say, well, get rid of them. So guess where they are living? Aren't they beautiful? So these are a 3-year plant. The other plant up there that's really huge is a 4-year plant. Great plant. More geranium roseanne, isn't that beautiful? Yeah, really nice. Sedum. Oh, over here, let's see. So look at the dahlias that are opening over here. Oh, and here's my lavender that's just gone by. This was beautiful. This was all lavender. Look at this dahlia that's going to open up for us. Isn't that beautiful? Cosmos. And this is a plant called lamb's ears, and they like you to plant this low in all the gardens because it's so soft. Feel it? It's like velvet. And this is a good plant for children in a garden, in a public garden. That's a cosmos. Here's sedum. That's sedum autumn joy. This is geranium roseanne. This is a fabulous plant. This is nepeta Walker's Low. These plants came from the Falls Village Flower Farm in Falls Village. Look at this sedum. Great plant. Pink bee balm. More echinacea and sedum, nepeta. And look at this. Look at this dahlia. How do you like that, huh? Isn't that gorgeous? Yep, I love it. Very sweet. And then this is the rock garden here. So when I built the house, we had to blast a hole in the foundation for the foundation, and all this granite came out. So we built walkways, and this is all thyme, flowering thyme here. See, and this is quickfire hydrangea, probably 2 years old, and that one is 4 years old there. And then at the top up here, let me get up these stairs, okay?
Sure.
These are not code stairs. That's a weed. This is a juga. This is another dahlia. Dahlias. Look at this one. I have about 100 dahlias. I have to dig them up. But it's worth it. Look at oh, there's a Japanese beetle that I'm gonna, there we go. This is another dahlia, that's sweet. And here's a spike variety. Beautiful plant. And another one. Sweet, isn't it?
Yes.
So these are Japanese anemones. This is the robotessima, and this flower came from Flowers Village Flower Farm. And this is what they look like before they open. And some people like the buds more than the flowers. They're very interesting. This is the walkway that Leon did for me, and I planted thyme in here. Here, look. Another dahlia, beautiful dahlia. More dahlias. Look at these. So these dahlias came from another client who wanted to get rid of them all.
I don't see why. It's
So
so
I brought them all up. Here's the old-fashioned Annabelle hydrangea.
We're at the D.M. Hunt Library in Falls Village, Connecticut, where folks have gathered to honor Falls Village artist and illustrator Ken Musselman. There's Ken in the gray sports shirt with a name tag. A few of his paintings are shown on the wall. Many will be sold. Ken was raised in the 1960s and 70s outside Cleveland, Ohio, known then for its massive steel mills. But Ken lived in the suburbs.
That was my house in Brooklyn, Ohio. That's where I grew up. So if anybody asks, are you from Falls Village? I'm not. I'm like an outsider. That's the house I grew up in. Oh yeah, this is funny. I always like this picture. This is life in suburbia. I mean, look at the enthusiasm on everyone's face. This is so Rockwellian. I gotta like do a painting of this someday. You get a close up on everybody's like, dad's at the grill. You know, I'm laying down in the laundry. You got grandpa visiting, my mother, my brother's on my sandbox, and my little sister there. And it's a white house with a white picket fence in the backyard of Brooklyn, Ohio. This is June of 1972. Oh my God, that's so funny. It's so funny. Oh man, good times. This was the tree in the backyard. It would bloom like every May, a crabapple tree. And I remember my mother telling me when I was a kid, you know, I was like, oh, I'm so glad. And she'd be like in tears when the blossoms would fall off, and I told her I'd go out there and we'd scotch tape them back on again. So. But I've painted quite a few pictures of this in my day when I was in high school. Yeah, actually, it's a picture of me when I was in high school, painting in the backyard. I did this. This is the summer, actually 76, the year before I graduated from high school, before I went in the Navy. And any event, I was the best artist in high school. So after I graduated, they took all my paintings. This is one of them, and they hung it up in the city hall, and they framed them for me. And then they were in the library and whatnot. And any event, that was before I went into service in the Navy. And then when I went into the Navy, let's see, we'll just throw these over here. Keep going. This is like show and tell. That was me in the Navy. If you can believe that, huh? That's great. Hey,
Yeah.
look what's behind here. I didn't even know that was in there. And then when I was Navy, I met my wife, who was also in the Navy.
Really?
And yeah. And then there's another Navy picture. I was like, what, 18 years old when I took that picture, when they took that picture. But yeah, that's what brought me to this area to begin with, was my wife, which was great. She was in the Navy, obviously, I just told you that. And she was a dispersing clerk, which was the pay clerk, which was when you're in the Navy, the best people to know were the cook and dispersing clerk, the person that paid you. So you see, I don't miss too many meals, and I married the dispersing clerk, and she grew up in East Canaan, and in any event, long story short, we got married, and somewhere in here, one of our honeymoon pictures. And where else do you go when you get married? Disney World. So I love for Disney, but this is outside. It's a Polynesian resort or something. That's us. You believe that?
Beautiful.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
When I was in service, that's me, the captain of my ship. I'm getting another award for painting murals. I did a lot of mural painting. But my specific job when I first went in was to become a structural mechanic. What was interesting about that was that I went to A school to learn how to use a screwdriver, aviation fundamentals school in Memphis, Tennessee, Nat Center. And this is what you basically learned from this book. And my objective, because they didn't have a school, was to be this. So by being this, I did this, and found out, like everything else, a roundabout way, in a sense that, well, it doesn't. It's kind of hard to put together, but to become a illustrator draftsman, you had to do on-the-job training, which meant there was no kind of school for it. So, in the event, I went to this fundamental school, and in my 2-week time period waiting for the A school to come available to become like an airman and learn how to become an airman, I decided I didn't really want to wash dishes for 2 weeks. So there's this big white wall, and I got a picture of it somewhere, but I painted a mural. And I had a lieutenant say, you know, you shouldn't really be a mechanic, you should be an artist. And in any event, that made me on the job to become an illustrator draftsman, like this. And it's kind of interesting because stuff in here is so old. You were talking about.
Yeah, show us some of those things that you drew.
Well, it was interesting. To make a long story short, this is the book that I illustrated. Because when I became an illustrator draftsman, not only learned from this book, I helped draw it. So this was one of the first publications, came out in 1980. But you got to remember, a lot of the stuff that I did was all drawn by hand. Like, for instance, you know, things like this that were done, you know, on Mylar. I was trained as a technical illustrator. I like that. That's one thing. And then, you know, we use airbrush. Well, even like that right there, it's all drawn by hand. You know,
This over here?
yeah, this one here. Pretty much a lot of this book I illustrated. There's some more things like that, you know, like that. And it was all done by hand before computers, and just constantly drawing and drawing and drawing and drawing. When I was in the Navy as an illustrator, but I also did drafting. You know, I was drafting missile silos. I had no idea what the heck they did. And here I'm drawing Armageddon because I'm drawing things that would essentially go on a Trident submarine. I was in the Navy for 4 years, and then right after Well, my wife still had a year to go, so I did a lot of different jobs in Jacksonville, Florida. I worked for Sunburst Graphics. I did screen printing. One of the places I worked for, the owner was a part owner of a Panama Jack suntan lotion. So I did a lot of things for Panama Jack. We did reprints. At Daytona Beach, we'd sell seconds. I did some design work for Kentucky Derby, 108th Kentucky Derby. Yeah, a lot of different accounts and things. A lot of various different art things, anything art related. But, I also, waited on tables. I worked at a gas station as a manager. I did all sorts of stuff. And then we were getting, what brought me to this area in Connecticut was the Lakeville Journal. There was an ad in a paper for a graphic designer. And I thought, well, heck, I asked Kathy, I said, well, where's Lakeville in relation to where you grew up in Connecticut? Because I'd never been to Connecticut before. And she said, well, that's a couple towns over. There was a company called Dottie Smith. I did an interview, and lo and behold, an hour after the interview, I got the job. So in Connecticut, the job I had, I was working at a marine engineering firm as a draftsman or something or other. And I resigned from that, and then got on, we did all the stuff to come to Connecticut. My job was to put together this catalog, which came out biannually, and they were always 6 months ahead. And fashion would go out as soon as, it's like, you do this and fashion changed. And she'd come in with Dottie herself, come in with 65 different earrings and bangles and bracelets. And I'd have to illustrate this by hand. So I was drawing this stuff by hand in pen and ink and everything. And the next day or the end of the week, however her schedule was, she'd go through it and say, discontinued. I think 2/3 of them ended up in a circular file. I never threw anything away because it would always come back. But everything I drew would end up going into a drawer somewhere, and they only took a specific amount, and then they would run with that in their catalog. And I had no conception or idea what the heck women's fashion was. I don't know about bangle from a bracelet from an earring to. I really wanted that job for a long time, and it was really great. It kind of ran its course. Fashion does that, and like anything, it had a good run. I think I got there right at its zenith, and this thing started to pass on, and like any business, it kind of fizzled out. But we all got pink slipped. Groups of us during the courses of time. It was important to keep gas in limousine. But they got rid of me, and I got laid off. First time I ever got laid off for anything in my life. My wife wasn't working at the time. I had a child that was 1.5 years old. I had a mortgage, and I was at the tender age of 24 years old. I mean, I was doing it right, but everything was kind of going wrong. So then, I was unemployed for some months. My wife had to go, scrub bathrooms somewhere. I don't know. She worked at all these different various jobs. And I eventually got a job in Hartford with the Advo system. And it was in a national print account executive. All right, so I did that for a while. I got sick of commuting to Hartford for 2 years. I was going to hide behind a brush, and that's what I was going to do. And for a long time, my first gallery was PS Gallery, which I'm still friends with Pat Steyer. I don't have anything in the gallery now, because anybody knows the galleries. And I was looking around at all the paintings. I said, I could paint. Well, finally, I just said, action's louder than words. I went home, got a piece of canvas, 24 by 48, painted the farm in a winter scene. Put it on a wall. It sold in a week. I want more. From that time on, is before 2008, I was probably selling, on average, a painting a week. And then the economy kind of went, and I was still selling, but I wasn't selling enough. And at that time with PS Gallery, I picked up other galleries. At one time I had, 3 galleries running for me. I'm always thinking, my wheels are always turning. I see things and then I just paint or draw them the way that I see them, and having the ability to do pen and ink illustrations was great. I was always in mischief as a child, so I always found myself drawing because I spent, I think, about 2/3 of my life grounded for doing something stupid or another. I don't know. Yeah, I'm the type of person that would always like, how far to push the envelope, kind of like Columbus, the world's flat. Well, how far do you know how far to push the envelope if you don't know where the edge is? So, don't push me over the edge. And I always wanted to see where the edge was, so I knew what my perimeters were, and I always went a little too far and ended up grounded for one reason or another. Which brought me to, I had to kind of entertain myself, so, at the early age, here's a little picture here, I think this is from 1962. I was always drawing as my coloring book, and I was set up there. It was nothing like getting a new coloring book and fresh paper for Christmas or whatnot. And with my dad's glasses, I was always entertaining everybody coming to the house. So this was like during Christmas time. I had fire engine jammies, get ready for bed. There's always put a show and dance on for the people. When I was a kid, one of my big inspirations to become an artist was this right here. I've always drawn and painted and illustrated. These golden books were the best thing. I was 3 years old, 5 years old, and my crayons, and I would try to draw the pictures in these golden books. And my talent really came from my grandfather. This is my grandfather's work. You got to think this is his sketchbook that I was allowed to have. My grandmother gave this to me. We'll talk about, Barney Google days and all that. And I keep this close. He did a lot of stuff. This is his sketchbook when he was a kid. But because it's like stuff when he was a kid, this is something that, you got to think this is like, in the 20s, early 30s, Depression, so, hope for becoming an illustrator, but that was his love. And his love for books too carried on. And it certainly carried on with my son. And my mom was, a librarian and all that. Just stuff like that. Let's see, there's all sorts of stuff in here. But anyways, yeah, stuff like this. Cartoons that don't even exist anymore. But that's where my love to become. I want to always be a cartoonist too. So I had it from a lot of different angles to become an artist. So hiding behind a brush was a good thing for a lot of different reasons, and that's what I did. That's my mom and dad. They were in Hawaii. My mom passed away. She was 55 years old, so I kind of outlived her. I'm 58. Died of breast cancer. And my dad died of loneliness some years after that, so parents are gone. And, that's what happens, it's life. But my mom was always encouraging me to go back to the whole thing with going to school and learning art. And she was working on her doctorate's degree. She was a librarian, she was always the big instiller of encouraged me with my artwork. My dad was proud of me, but like I said, he was a tradesman guy, and he saw what had happened. His family, it's funny because he ran a linotype. He was a linotype operator. He was in the printing business. That's us. My wife was in the Navy. We used to do a lot of parties. It's after we got married. Oh yeah, gotta show these too. That was me when I was what the heck? I was 3 years old, 2 years old, something like that. 3 years old, yeah. Sporting looking guy, huh? That's cute. My son, who graduated from the Naval Academy in 2008, he's a lieutenant now, and I have a grandchild. I have 2 grandchildren now, a girl and a boy. He volunteered to go into the Navy. He volunteered to go on submarines of all things. Like, oh my God. Went on submarines, did like 4 patrols. He was on USS Rhode Island, which is a boomer, which were the things I was drawn to trying submarines. This thing was like as long as 3 football fields. I mean, for a submarine, and as wide as a 4-lane, 5-lane highway. The thing was huge. It's like an ant on the side of a loaf of bread. The thing was, and there were like 12 on this coast, 12 on the other coast. I knew all about trident, so he did that. Oh my God. This kid didn't swim. He got sick just going up and down in an elevator. I'm an artist, but what do you do? What's your day job, you know? And I try to say, well, I draw, and I do. I paint every single day. Every single day I paint. I pick up a brush. See, I don't think of art as it's kind of hard to explain. Anybody who's an artist, it comes from here. But the artwork is something you just, it's me. It's just, I enjoy doing it. I hope I can do till I think I'll kick with a brush in my hand. It's a career. It's a life choice that was God-given. And I don't know. We still on?
We're still on, but we could wrap it up.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you
Thanks.
so much.
I didn't talk too much already.
No, it's been great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. You do a good job on this. This is great. It's good for the town.
Pine Grove is a cozy little community off Belden Street in Falls Village, Connecticut. It was originally organized in the 19th century as a Methodist spiritual retreat. It's where Judy Dupre grew up in the 1940s and where her father was caretaker.
Well, my father married my grandmother and took over caretaking at Pine Grove, and I lived at Pine Grove until I was like in the 4th grade, and he built the house on the hill. But it was great fun growing up in Pine Grove. You had a lot of old maid school teachers that came up in the summer, and they were always ready to teach you something. Mrs. Bartlett would take me wildflower hunting, and Mrs. Way would read me books. The person that lived in the first house, I can't remember their name, but he got me interested in stamp collecting. He had a pond with koi fish in it. And every year it was our job to collect the koi fish and bring them over and put them in our spring in the winter. And by gosh, they survived the winter, and we'd take them back over in the spring and put them in his pond. There was always something going on at the Grove. They had movies every Saturday night, and I think Mr. Michaels brought them up, and he was the house outside of the Pine Grove, the first house, and I think he had something to do with the movie industry. But we always had good movies to watch. And the ladies in the grove taught me how to knit, and they taught me how to crochet, and I loved to read, so there was no...
Really?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. What type of books?
Oh, I like mystery books.
Mysteries. Did you get them from the library?
Yeah, and as you said, a lot of the ones that were up in the Grove were teachers, and they always had a whole bookshelf of books for children. And they would, knowing me, I was there, they would bring me up books too. As I said, it was a great place to grow up because it was a safe place.
How many people would you say lived in the Grove at that time?
Well, of course, being a kid like I was and never going out anywhere, more than 2 was a lot.
You had a lot of playmates there at the Grove?
Not too many, but they did. They had a tennis court up there. They had a sand lot up there. They had a lot of places where you could go and play. I don't remember too many people that I played with.
Huh.
I don't know whether there was more adults up there or not. I think at that time I can vaguely remember the hotel being up there too.
Hotel in front?
In Pine Grove. They had I know my mother worked there. They had a hotel.
I'll be darned.
They had their own church too, didn't
Yeah, they had their own church. At one time they had their own jail too.
they? Right.
Long time ago. That I don't remember. I can remember the Grace girls getting in the houses in the wintertime. We had an awful time getting them out. They'd make such a mess. They didn't plug up the holes enough, and they got in and they made themselves at home until the people come up. Because that, as I said, we didn't plow it out in the wintertime, so once October, where school started, you didn't have too many people up there. Now you have people up there all the time. A lot of people live there all year round.
Where did they live when they weren't at Pine Grove?
Lots of them were from the city. There used to be a depot down there where Conklin's is, where they would used to get off for Pine Grove, and they would go across the back of our lot there, over to the Grove. And there's still if you look, there's a path there where
There's a roadway
where
there.
the wagons went.
Yep.
That was a pretty going concern at one time, Pine Grove. A lot of people used to go there to visit and to go to camp meetings. And
How about you, Ray?
What do you want to know about
Ray's
me?
from Amenia.
I'm from Amenia.
Uh-huh.
I don't know when we came. We were just figuring out. We came over here sometime in the early '60s. Worked on the farm.
But you worked on the farm when you were a kid.
Well, yeah, my
All your life.
mother and father worked on a farm, and I did a lot of work on one of the farms that used to be up on McEnroe Farm. Used to be up on top of Depot Hill
In Amenia.
in Amenia,
Uh-huh.
and school was out, and he come over one morning because they used to put hay up in the loft with the old hay fork and the wet hay, and the horses would pull it up, and he asked me if I wanted to drive horses to pull the hay up, and I says I can try it. So I did that for one summer, and that worked out great. And of course, when the guys in the hay mill, when they want it dumped, they just holler, and the horses stop, and then they trip it, and the hay falls down, and they fork it where they want to. And that's how that happened. Well, the next year I came up and everything, he says, I got a surprise for you. He says, I got a tractor for you.
Who is that?
McEnroe, Joe McEnroe.
A friend of your family?
Yeah, he lived right in the city of Amenia.
We lived at Pine Grove until I was like 4th grade, and then my father built the brick house on the hill, and we moved up there. This house here belonged to my father's second wife, Catherine Smith, she was. And when her father got old, my father bought this place from him. The original farm is just across the road, just what you see there. That's what was there. And I was told at one time they grew tobacco on this field across the road where the corn is.
Really?
Yeah.
During
Probably in the early 1900s.
During the Depression and everything, yeah.
My mother never drove, so we didn't. We amused ourselves right there at the farm. There's plenty to do. We had pigs and we had some cows. I can remember we had mules that before we had tractors. Chickens, lambs, which my father made a mistake about buying the lambs because we made pets, and when one time when we came home from school, the lambs were gone. I still cannot eat lamb. I still cannot smell lamb being cooked. So as I said, there was always something to do. My grandmother lived with us, my mother's mother, and she made the bread and did most of the cooking. We fed all the guys that worked on the farm, which were mostly my uncles. My father had 8 people in his family, and 2 were girls and the rest were boys. So the men stayed on the farm or went into service, and when they came back, they stayed on the farm. And of course the Grove. I was always up in the Grove visiting the ladies up there. At that time there was no telephone or anything up there, so that was my job. If somebody got born and they called, I would go up and tell the people up there. And give them all good news and sometimes sad news. And then we always shopped at Dean's, which is in South Canaan, right next to the church there. Every Friday we'd trundle in the car and go down there, and we usually didn't buy very much because we had most of our stuff, but we would go, and I think he also sold grain too. I'm not sure. And one thing I can remember about that is he always had calendars of the Dion quintuplets. And I was amazed that one woman had so many babies. And I would stare at that thing for hours. And that's one thing I remember about his store.
Edmund Dean, or George Dean.
His dad. But you'd go down there and you know, we didn't have TV. You didn't get a newspaper every day. So if you wanted the news of the week, you would go there and get it, or go to the bar room. That was how you'd find out what was going on and what your neighbors were doing and what they were doing and what they weren't supposed to be doing.
The bar room, was that at the inn?
The bar room was at the inn, yep. Yeah. And at that time, all the locals went there. It wasn't a fancy place. You know, all your townspeople would go there and meet and decide what they were going to do the next week.
What year did you come over here, Ray?
We were trying to think of that. My son was born in '58, and he was like 6, the oldest son. So 59, 60, 61, 62, 63.
Or 62
About
somewhere
63, 64.
Somewhere in that age, yeah.
And my father had 3 girls. I had 4 boys.
You had 4 boys?
I had 4 boys.
Uh-huh.
And as I started getting a little older, he said, my father said, I'm either going to sell the farm, or if you want to come over and help me run it, okay. And we did. It was a good place to raise kids, especially boys.
Right here?
Right here.
Uh-huh.
So we came over, and they each had their own chores to do, and they stayed out of jail. They stayed out of trouble. Mainly because they were busy and were too tired to do anything else when they got home. Now it's up for sale, and it's been sold.
The farm?
Yeah.
Ah.
My oldest son was the farmer, and he died. And after that, I didn't want to do it. I felt that it was time to relinquish it to somebody else. My other 3 sons I didn't want involved in the farm because I really think it helped my son die. The stress was too much.
Wow.
So Jack here's they're going to buy it, and they're going to keep it into farming, which I'm really happy about. And
Right.
it's time for the next generation.
Yeah, yeah.
You really have to either have two incomes or have a big farm to do anything nowadays. It's almost impossible to make it. I mean, they're getting less for their milk now than when we quit farming 5 or 6 years ago. How can they do? You can't do that. And what happens is the prices, you start getting good prices, then the farmers put on more cows. They put on more cows, then you get a glut in the market, and the price goes down. I always said there should be a quota, but everybody's always shot me down and said, nah, you don't want a quota. Okay, well, farmers are independent. No, they don't want a quota, but there's got to be some way that you can do it so that it doesn't fluctuate so much. That was one of the problems we had. It fluctuated so much.
The price. How many cows did you...
At one time we had about 300 or 400 cows,
I didn't know that.
and we milked about, what, 200?
200 for 20-some years,
Yeah.
year-round.
Yeah.
Is it true that cows give more milk if they're kept in the barn?
Cows give more milk if they're happy.
If you keep a cow happy
If you
and
keep-
comfortable,
Then you'll
she
get
will
your...
produce for you.
And I don't think it makes any difference whether you're in the barn or whether you're out in pasture.
No.
It's, you've got to keep them comfortable. We had a guy come in twice a year and give them a pedicure, cut their toenails, because their toenails grow so long that when they walk, it bothers them. So if you have them hoofed twice a year, then they're more comfortable. You try to put, like, days like this, you'd have fans in the barn or underneath the free stalls so that they would be
Fresh
cooler
air.
for them. Lots of farmers, when they came in the milking parlor, they had a spray that they would spray them to cool them off before they came in the milking parlor. I really feel that the happier the cow is and the better fed, the better you are. We had a nutritionist who would formulate, take the silage and the haylage and test it to see what proteins and stuff were in it, and then he would tell us what kind of a ration to feed the cows.
How many times did you feed them a day?
Twice a day, was it,
Twice
Ray?
a day.
Yeah, twice a day.
Once in the morning and once around about 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
And milking, how many times?
Twice. We weighed them.
Twice a
2
day.
times a day.
Did you have to do that yourselves?
Sometimes. Let me say that the girls were not allowed on the farm.
Your girls?
My sisters and me. My mother was old-fashioned, and we weren't allowed on the farm. The men would talk bad language, and she didn't want us to hear that, and we weren't allowed to come on the farm.
Really?
We could come visit and pet the calves, but not to stay.
Huh.
As I got older, then after Ray and I came over, I started doing the finances and the books. But before that, it was very rarely that we were allowed to come on the farm.
How many brothers and sisters did you have?
I had 2 sisters.
2 sisters. Your father had the brothers.
My father had the brothers.
Okay.
And then when I had kids, I had the men.
You had 5 boys.
4 boys.
4 boys. And
And he was in pig heaven then, Now he's got the boys.
to work on the farm.
Got
to
all
do
the
the
workers now.
I can remember the first tractor we got was an Oliver, and Tracy Atwood's dad took over caretaking Pine Grove when my father left. And he had a John Deere, and it put. And we could always tell when he left the house over at Pine Grove and started up the hill. We'd say, here comes Mr. Atwood, and sure enough, up the hill he'd come with the tractor, puffing away. My father always used to make fun of him with his puffy tractor. Well, we ended up with John Deere's too.
Yeah, but they didn't go puff.
No, they didn't go puff. We had bigger ones than that. We used to sell grain. My father sold, what's the Eastern States, or and
Sold hay in the summer months, winter months too.
yeah, and they'd bring them in the railroad cars uptown, and we'd have to go up and unload them and deliver them to the different farmers.
Uptown would be North Canaan?
North Canaan, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Used to come in there, just where it used to be Brewer's automobile dealership. They used to come in just north of that and park, and then we had a certain length of time to get up there and empty them cars out. Because they wouldn't leave them more than a couple of days.
This is grain that you took up there?
You know, that's grain that they delivered to us.
Oh,
That was in
Citrus pulp and
bags.
stuff like that from anywhere they could get it. Ship it up, and they come in great big huge bags. We'd have to take them out of there and put them on our truck and bring them down here or deliver them to somebody. And it was quite a chore to dig them out of a rail car after they've been bouncing around for a while.
yeah. Who did you have to help you with that, Ray?
Well, Uncle Tim and
Freddie,
Uncle Freddie, the
yeah.
brothers, you know.
Yeah.
My father was a hustler. That was extra money, you
Yeah,
know.
usually it was Freddie, and Tim and myself that did the unloading of the cars.
How often did you have to do that?
Oh,
About once a month.
once a month anyhow, at least
Uh-huh.
once a month, yeah.
What was the hardest work that you had to do?
Hardest work? Getting up in the morning. That's the hardest thing. Every morning you had to be over the barn at 5 o'clock. Yeah. And you worked. They wasn't no standing around. You worked all that time. When you finished one job, you had another one you had to go right to.
What were some of the jobs, Ray?
We used to scrape the upper barn out by hand with a scraper.
Is that with the manure?
No, scrape it in a drop and then clean the drop and then make sure they had bedding underneath the cows that you kept up in the winter months or even during summer months when some of them would get ready to calve. We kept them in the barn so we could watch them closer. We had to clean all that out every day, 7 days a week.
You did a lot of feeding, too.
And then later on when Freddie was slowing down and I went in and did some of the milking with Albert for a good many years and learned how to feed the cows and stuff like that. And then when he started getting sick, he got me to take the milk over and do it myself. But he still kept the feeding chart up to his house. They got it from, they had a milk tester come in and test everything in that way. We knew what to give the cows and stuff and what cow much to give to each one.
Well, the milk tester would come in and test the amount of pounds each cow gave. So you would know what cows were producing and what cows weren't producing.
Uh-huh.
Once you knew what cows weren't producing, then you would decide whether it was the feed they were getting or whether they were just needed to be replaced.
Time to dry them off, or if they wasn't milking that much and they wasn't that good of a cow, you would dry them off and sell them for beef.
Huh.
Years ago, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Didn't hang on like they do today. Well, even today they don't.
No, if you're a good farmer, you don't hang on to them if they're not producing the
No,
milk.
if you don't make enough for it, where you could total it up for the year, if you're not making a certain amount of money from them, you get rid of them because they're not helping you.
On a good day, the average cow would yield how much milk?
You'd have to ask him.
Well, for a long time it was only around about 30, 40 pounds.
30, 40 pounds?
Yeah, that's for the whole day.
But now it's more.
Now they're talking 100 pounds, 200 pounds a day from an animal. That's the way they've increased it. So, but you breed your animals for better. Every time they have a calf, you breed it to a better stock, and that way you build your herd up slowly instead of trying to do it all at once. And it works out real good. They're still doing that today.
And that's another thing. We always had a breeder come in to breed the cows.
Yeah, they always
So
have a
you
breeder
check,
come in.
you keep track of the sires and know which sires you want for different traits. We had one uncle that would spread manure. One day he parked the manure spreader over underneath where you push the manure out onto the spreader, one of the cows decided that looked like a lovely bed. So she walked out, laid down on the manure spreader. And my uncle got in the tractor, got all the way up around the barn and all ready to go out the driveway before we yelled at him enough so he realized the cow was in there.
Then he turned around and looked at what was on top of the spreader.
Do cows have personalities?
Oh,
Oh
sure
yeah,
they
you
do.
better believe they do.
Especially Jerseys. That was my son's favorite cow, Jersey. And my father was a Holstein man. And my son brought Jerseys home. And he says, get those pets out of here. Well, the Jerseys stayed. And we were always afraid that they were going to, the Holsteins would chase them away. Because Holsteins are the black and white ones that are pretty good size. Jerseys are the little feminine ones that look like deer. They're kind of a
Chubby person.
a tannish kind of a cow, and small in stature. Well, the first time we took the Jerseys over there, we fed them in like a bunker, so that you put the grain out, and it was self-serve. The Jerseys chased the Holsteins. The Holstein didn't chase the Jerseys. And they're great at opening fences. You lock them in and they're out.
If you have a gateway that you go in and out of, you want to have that so when you go out, you want to have it so the cow cannot lick it, because she'll come over as soon as you leave and start licking the chain, trying to get it loosened up. If she gets it loosened up, the gate will open up and she just walks out. That's the way it works. So you had to make it sure, so if they started licking the chain, they weren't going to get it open. We had to do that a lot. Just about every pen that we made in there, even in the barn, when we put them in the calves and raise them in the barn, even the calves would watch you enough times, and if you didn't put the wooden handle down, they would come over and lick it, and the door would open up, and they'd be out running around the
They'd
barn.
butt it with their head too.
Yeah, they was no dumb animals, I'm telling you. They was pretty smart.
Pretty smart?
Yeah, they see you do it enough times. They as soon as if you're cleaning their pen, as soon as you walked out and closed the door, they would be overlooking and licking everything and see if they could get something that was loose. They would. It was comical, but.
Is it a stupid question for me to ask? Did you have favorite cows?
Oh, as I said, I wasn't allowed in the barn, so I
Oh,
wasn't
okay.
allowed to get close to the cows.
Butchie had favorite cows.
Butch, my son, did. Of course, they were Jerseys. He had favorite cows.
He
They
had
were
favorite
Jerseys.
cows, and he could just call their name if they was outside, and they'd come running right over to him. You didn't have to go look for him; they'd come
Is
right
that
to
right?
him. They knew his voice and everything.
Which was your oldest?
That was the oldest.
The
The
oldest
oldest one?
Yeah. That's probably about the hardest job, is loading hay. And you can't find anybody to do it anymore. When I was a kid, you'd give them a 6-pack of beer and they'd work all day. Now they won't do that. And you're kind of afraid to have anybody help either, because if they hurt their back or something like that,
You're liable.
then you're liable. So, we did square bale up until the end, but we did a lot of round baling, which helped, because there wasn't that much, there was not much grunt work. You just round baled it, and then you had a tractor with prongs that would poke the bale, and you could move it that way. There was no manual labor involved in it.
See, we'd bale the square bales on the trailers, and have 7 trailers sitting in the yard. And when they got done come back from breakfast from milking, there would be a crew go up in the hay mow, and then another guy would chuck the hay off on the elevator to go up in the hay mow, and they had to stack it all the way up.
Now that's probably about the hardest work.
That was a lot of work.
Putting the square bales on the elevator?
Yeah.
Running up in there.
That was mechanical?
Yeah.
Ran off a tractor, maybe?
No,
No.
you had a motor.
We put an electric motor on it, and ran it, and they didn't start it we didn't start it up until the guys were up in the mow. And then when they hollered, then we started unloading it, and we put it in, there was, maybe 4 feet sections in the elevator that goes up every 4 feet. We try to put a bale in every one of the 4 feet. If it was going too fast, they'd holler, then you had to go to the third one and slow it down a little bit. Because they just couldn't, when you gotta chuck it, and you put it them little cupels on the side of the barn, you see the elevator was in that, you got probably 60 or 70 feet to the end of the barn or to the center of the barn where you gotta travel it. And you gotta be a guy in a little elevator checking it, chuck it to the next guy, and he's gotta chuck it to another guy that puts it in place. And that takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. And you know, as you get higher to the roof, it gets pretty hot up in there.
Well, it's hot anyway.
And
Never
it's-
mind
yeah, and
getting
it's
to the
hot anyhow, but
Yeah.
and that's how we put it in.
Let me ask you about the machinery, Ray. You took care of the machinery?
No, John did. My other son.
Well,
Your other
yeah,
son.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
And he
after-
helped.
I did a lot of the repairing and everything till John came along, and then when he come along, I did more or less taking care of all the equipment that I was using. And if something little thing was wrong with it, I'd bring it in at noontime or at the end of the day, and I'd tell John this had to be fixed, so I'm ready to go on the first in the morning, 8 o'clock in the morning, so I can get going. And he would, most of the time, he'd fix it. But then I'd be back in, because he didn't want to listen to me. He didn't want to fix it the way I told him to fix it, so I'd be back in at the end of the day sometime, fixing it again. And then I told him, please fix it the right way I told you to do it. And he did that, and then everything seemed to calm down and work right. But it was kind of hard to teach the young ones, because their idea of fixing something and my idea of fixing something, I figured out fixing it, it's going to be permanent. It ain't going to break again. And that's the way I always ran the farm, and it worked out pretty good.
And we did most of our repair work.
Yeah, we did most all of our repair work. Very seldom we had to take anything up to get it fixed.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Where did you learn how to do that?
Trial and error, I guess.
Trial and error, and me, when I was born on the farm years ago and worked on the farm, I knew how it was running. And of course, that farm, they was milking 100 and some cows that time, and they was milking all these cows by hand in a bucket. All of them cows, you realize what people worked at that time, and did things the way they supposed to. Now all the milk, all them cows, you know, it was more than what people think. So, and I milked some of the cows when I was younger, helping my father out in the barn, and it's no easy chores to sit down on a cow that don't know you. She don't want you to touch her. You can get kicked. You'll kick your bucket over and you just about get it full. Now that you wasted all that milk, and it's a lot of things that you got to understand with animals. But I did all that stuff myself. It wasn't easy work. When you're trying to go to school and going out and doing that, the weekends wasn't too bad because you didn't have to go to school. But during the week, then I had to, when we go to school, I had to walk to school, which was a mile down and a mile back every day.
This
walking.
is back in Armenia?
That's in Armenia.
Back in
yeah.
Armenia.
And it was, we call it Delavan Hill. It's a great big steep hill just as you're leaving where the railroad tracks are, straight up. About a good quarter of a mile up there on top before it starts leveling off. You had to go up that, and you got to go another 3/4 of a mile to get to where the house was. You had to do that twice a day. And in the winter months, it was pretty cold.
To sum it up, farming was a great life.
Farming was a great
It
life.
was a great life.
Good. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you both very much. Let's kick this thing off.
All right.
Go ahead. Yeah. You're going to tell us the amazing story of how you met.
Oh God.
I know it's a long story, but
No,
we got
we'll keep
time.
it short. We'll keep it short. So what year was that? That was like 2000. You got here in 2002, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think it was
No, I got here in 2001.
1, okay. What was 2002?
It was 2002.
Yeah, so I was a part of a production of a 70s disco version of Shakespeare's Midsummer Night's Dream called The Donkey Show, which me and a bunch of friends wrote together in a little dumpy venue in New York City. And we did it for fun. I mean, we thought we would maybe, run for 2 weeks and invite, all our friends and just have this kind of one-off blast. And anyway, the show wound up taking off, getting picked up by a producer. It went to London, Scotland, France, and I got to do the show out there for 2 years. And we were doing it in New York City for 8 years. And one night I was performing in the show. I wore nothing but a little tiny sarong. I was one of Titania's fairies in the show.
Cobweb.
A cobweb. Just to give you an idea, we took Midsummer Night's Dream out of the forest and we put it into, what you might consider a similar environment, a disco. It's dark, it's mysterious, there's the potential for mistaken identity. And it was all set to 70s disco music. So Amber came one night with her father, and there I was, half naked in my little sarong, and there was this kind of pre-show where the audience comes in to it takes place in a disco, so the audience can come in, have a drink, dance, and then the show just starts slowly unfolding around you. It's a very cool idea. It kind of breaks that traditional, stage, audience here. Everything is just intermingled, which was pretty cool. And so during this pre-show, we danced with the audience and kind of warm up the crowd. And saw this beautiful young lady walk into the room, and worked to my charm, you might say. Well, I mean, realistically, I saw Amber, and everybody usually thought that the fairies were homosexuals because we were all very flamboyant and,
And they wore a lot of makeup and
a lot of
glitter.
makeup and glitter. Yeah. And but I saw Amber and I thought, wow, that is a good-looking woman. And so we danced a little bit, but I knew that the way maybe to her heart was to get to her mother first. And so she was there with it was her stepmom and her father. And so I started dancing with her stepmom, and in fact scooped her up and put her up on a dance cube with me. And it was a packed night that night. We had about 500 people there, and crowd was going crazy seeing me dance with this middle-aged woman, this half-naked tattooed guy.
And Angela loved it. Luke gave her the tambourine that he had during the pre-show, and he had her spank his backside with the tambourine to the beat of the music, which is just so ridiculous. But she just had a great time, and
it was great.
Yeah.
It was
which is a story she told at our wedding as well.
But when her mother was spanking my ass with a tambourine, I looked into the audience to see what was going on in her face, and she was grinning from ear to ear. So I was like, all right, maybe I got a little in here right now. So that was kind of the beginning of it. And then during the show, I kind of kept an eye on her, and then I made her a little flower out of a paper napkin. I'll show you. This is what I do. This is how I won over my wife. Ladies and gentlemen, if you ever want to win over a woman, forget the real bouquets.
Roses.
Just get creative.
Chocolates.
And make a flower out of a napkin. It gives you the illusion that you have some artistic ability, and shows that maybe you're willing to go one step beyond reaching for your wallet.
Years of bartending here.
Years of bartending, I learned it's a little
Paying
bit.
off.
And this is how I won my wife over.
Thank you.
And so anyway, we connected we danced after the show, and I gave her my email, and that was, and we kept in touch, and that was really the genesis of it. We actually were friends for a good, 4 years actually before we wound up together. So we had this great ongoing friendship. Want to tell them a little bit about some of the pictures we sent?
Yeah. So when this was way back in 2002, you know, we could email, but it wasn't quite, you know, as technologically advanced as it is now. So we often wrote letters back and forth and chatted quite a bit on the phone, and we sent each other books and sent each other pictures as well of when we were kids and recent pictures. And one of the first pictures that Luke sent was a picture of him and his 4 brothers, one of whom is adopted, African-American boy, and they were all wearing matching outfits. And they were all kind of like just 2 to 6, 7 years old. And it was just such a great picture, and it really made me stop and think, because I come from a family of 6 kids. All 5 of my siblings are adopted, 4 of them from kind of overseas and mixed ethnicities. And my mom used to dress us all alike when we were little, so we have very similar pictures. You know, here he is, 5 boys, mixed ethnicities with matching outfits, and I have, you know, a ton of those at home as well. So it made me kind of stop and think, like, oh wait, maybe this is someone to look into.
I actually rented those pictures. I found out she had. I don't really.
And he's been keeping it up for like the past 15 years. It's tough.
This all happened in New York City.
Yeah, in New York City, yep.
But you're from Washington State.
I'm from Seattle, Washington.
Were you dancing with the Rockettes at this time?
So I was actually, when we first met, I was just about to leave on my first tour. So I toured with the Rockettes my first year, and I was leaving like in the next few days, I think, after we met. So during that first tour was when we really got to know each other, because I wasn't in the city, so that was when we corresponded with emails and letters and chatted on the phone, which was kind of nice to get to know each other in that way. You know, and then 3 months later I was back and we got to hang out a little bit more personally.
It's like the modern day John and Abigail Adams, you know.
Just like
Of course.
I mean, the art form of writing letters is like over. Who does that anymore, you know? It was a really nice way to communicate. It's cool.
You still have those letters, I'm sure?
we have a few of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to see them.
I do. They're in the apartment in New York. I've come across some of them recently.
Cool.
Yes. In one of those boxes.
You mentioned you were a bartender. You've done a lot of things. You were a tattoo artist.
Well, I was not a tattooist. I worked for a tattoo artist. I was merely a canvas for a tattoo artist. But I did run a very famous tattoo artist's business and shop for him. A guy named Jonathan Shaw in New York City. So yeah. So that was one of my various you know, jobs that I did for a long time.
You're so multi-talented. I mean,
Not really, but
you sing, you have a magnificent voice,
oh, well, thank you.
and you play guitar,
Yeah.
and you do that on weekends to this day.
Yeah, I do. I've been playing with the same band for, well, the same guy in the band for, God, almost 30 years now. Yeah. Pale Moon Gang. Come see us. Yeah, we've been playing for quite a long time. My bandmate Richard and I met him when I was 14, 14 years old, and he was about 18, and it's been a long, you know, I mean, being in a band is kind of like being married, you know. I mean, you have your ups and your downs, and you know, and this, it's like, you know, but it's, you know, when you find somebody you connect with on musically and as friends, you know, it's worth working all that stuff out.
Yeah. And Amber, when did you get started dancing? As a child?
Yeah,
doing recitals and things like that?
Yeah, exactly. I was, you know, 6, 7 years old and always just loved dancing. And when I graduated from high school, I figured, you know, I need to not dance anymore and I need to focus and go to college and, you know, get a degree. And it was a good year for me because that first year I didn't take any classes, I didn't do any shows, and it helped me realize that that was all I really wanted to do. So I changed my path a little bit. I stayed in Seattle, finished out school at University of Washington and have a degree in psychology and philosophy. But I did a lot of dance and theater throughout the rest of my college and always kind of had a plan to move to New York City to audition and work in musical theater, which I did for many years, and I still work in theater here up in this area. But in New York City, I toured nationally with Cats, with Crazy for You, with Funny Girl, did some regional productions as well, and I was with the Rockettes for 7-8 years, performing at Radio City Music Hall and all over the U.S., which was pretty amazing. The show is so demanding. You can do up to 5 shows a day. You're dancing 6 days a week. Also doing PR some days, and or maybe rehearsing while you're doing the show. You're also rehearsing for special events like the tree lighting or Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. So it's a grueling, exhausting schedule, but amazing and wonderful to be a part of as well.
What was it like auditioning for the Rockettes? Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Was it scary?
Yes. I went to, when I was living in New York City, I was auditioning often, which helps. When you go to auditions at least twice a week for months on end, you get kind of used to it, which is good. If I was just going to one audition, every few months, I'm sure I'd be very nervous. But with Radio City, they have hundreds of girls audition every year, and probably about 500 girls. They line up and circle around Radio City. You go upstairs into the music hall, and they audition groups of like 50 girls at a time, and they just do a huge cut. They can see what they want, and they can see very quickly within 4 8 counts or less if they want to see more. So they'll let go of 80% of the girls, and they'll be left with a group of maybe 80 or so, and then you'll do a little bit more tap, you'll sing a little bit, they might do another cut, and then bring 50 of you back the next day for a callback, and then you'll be there for 2 full days, and then you'll just sit home and wait and hear if you got the job. And my first year, I remember I got a call at about 8:30 or so in the morning. And first thing I wanted to do was tell my family out in Seattle, Washington. So I called them at about 5 a.m. and woke them all up, screaming that I was going to be a Rockette.
How exciting.
Yeah.
Now, when you were a child, Luke, your folks had a home in this area.
Yeah, they did.
Sharon, I think?
Nope, Lakeville.
Lakeville.
Yeah.
And they used to come up on weekends with you?
Yeah, so my dad and mom built a house up here it was completed in 1969, and it sat up on Wells Hill Road, right past Robin Hill Lane, heading towards Lime Rock. And it was this crazy, like, all glass, really geometric, like cubist looking house. It was done by a guy named Peter Eisenman, who is now like a world famous architect. It was one of 5 of his guinea pig houses that really made him a superstar in the architect world. And the house turned out to be a total nightmare. I mean, it was built for California. It had a flat roof. It leaked from day one, but it was this, for the time that it lasted, I mean, it was an amazing place to spend summers. And we'd come up here during the summertime, and we would terrorize Lakeville, and we made a ton of great friends, and I always remained connected to Lakeville and to my friendships here, and always said that one day I wanted to come back. I thought I'd come back and have a weekend place. I didn't realize I'd ever be here living full time with 2 kids, but
and originally we were weekenders, and then
that is true.
They became longer weekends, and even longer weekends, and life is just it's easy up here. It's easy to breathe. There's a lot of space, a lot of room, and you just don't get that in New York City. And I think we both are more drawn to this area now.
Yeah. Do you spend a lot of time in New York these days?
We go back in. It kind of depends on the week and the projects that we're doing up here and business-wise with our tour company in the city.
Yeah.
We go in every week or every other week for a few nights. We still have an apartment downtown, so we for the kids. Everyone comes into the city.
Oh,
and We
good.
stay there for a few nights
Good.
to get some things
And
done.
I'm intrigued. Your apartment is in Chinatown.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, yep.
That's
Yep. Our apartment, we actually live in a complex called Knickerbocker Village, which is where, I'm not sure if you'll remember the names, but Julius and Ethel Rosenberg lived.
the spies.
The spies, yep, yep.
Executed.
Yep, that's where they were dragged out of our building and charged with treason. So, yeah, we lived down there, and it used to be like an old Jewish Italian building. The building was just filled with Jewish and Italian immigrants, and now it's mostly Chinese. You still have remnants of the old Jewish community and Italian community in the building, and they, they sit in there just bitching about the new Chinese people. They're forgetting that they were once the newcomers to the city and that they are now everybody forgets. Everybody forgets that they were once the new kids on the block. And that people once didn't welcome them, everybody forgets, and so, but it's lovely. We have a great, really great little apartment, and it's it's right off the East River, so we have a view of the East River from our window. We can see the Manhattan Bridge and in Brooklyn in the
The
background.
kids love to, even at a year and a half, they love to stand at the window and look out, because you can see the FDR, you can see the water, you can see Brooklyn on the other side, and they just kind of stand at that window. We're behind them, holding them, assisting them, and they just love to, look out and see what's going on.
I mean,
in the
that's so
world.
classic New York, sitting by a window and watching the world go by,
Yeah, yeah.
But it's really the best of both worlds that we have. We're very fortunate, and we have to be in New York. I mean, we still do run a company out of there. So
Let's talk about the company.
Yeah.
Real New York Tours.
Real New York Tours. Yep. So
You started it together?
well, we did. I mean, I basically was a tour guide, doing tours for a bus tour company. I mean, if you want to go back even a little further, I was a miserable employee at a company doing lighting design, and I was like, not the job for me. And
But you weren't actually doing lighting design. It was a lighting design
Yeah,
company. You
I
were
was,
doing
I-
like the bookkeeping.
Yeah, it was,
Which
yeah.
Luke has many strengths, and bookkeeping is would be way down on the list
2
somewhere.
plus 2 is 5.
So you were not happy
Yeah.
there at all, and
And so now that Amber's
You would
clarified that my math stinks, I was really unhappy, and I talked about getting a tour guide license, and because I'm born and raised in New York City, and I thought I loved showing people around New York. I loved New York history. I've been reading about it for years, and as a young kid, I used to explore the subway tunnels and go find the old abandoned train stations in New York City. We used to go search for Indian caves in Central Park. I mean, it was kind of like the urban Huckleberry Finn, for kids growing up in New York. You have this massive urban setting with all sorts of great adventures to be had, So I just thought, being a tour guide might be a really cool gig. So I'm working this miserable job, and Amber just said, hey, stop complaining, do something about it. Either start training for your tour guide license or stop coming home and talking about it, which is kind of what I needed to hear. So I did that and got my license, started working for another company doing bus tours, and just quickly realized that that's just not the way to see New York. Seeing New York, we always use the comparison to seeing New York from the top of a bus is like going to the aquarium. You're seeing everything from a safe distance, where if you do it by subway and foot, the way New Yorkers do it every day, it's like scuba diving. You're in the thick of it, you're in the belly of the beast, and you can really get a more local, immersive perspective of the city. So that was the idea, was to create a more real experience for people that really wanted to see New York City and its neighborhoods, not just the iconic stuff, but real neighborhoods where real people live, and where the hidden gems were, the cracks, the crevices of New York, and hence the name Real New York Tours. So
that was 2007. So we've had that
Yeah.
company now for 10 years,
Yeah.
which is
And so Amber was really the catalyst to give me that kick in the ass to get things going. And can I say ass? And then it was, and then it started with just me hoping to pay the rent. I mean, I didn't think it was going to grow to the level that it's grown to, but it just kind of kept moving forward. And I mean, we would do things that were non-traditional. Our traditional companies weren't doing. I mean,
For
we
example,
bring women also in families back to our apartment to see what a New York City apartment looked like. We would let people come over to breastfeed if they had an infant. Yeah, I mean, it was we wanted people to feel like they were hanging out with a friend or family.
we also wanted to create when we needed more than just you as a tour guide, and we started bringing in other tour guides. We really wanted to create a family. And that means treating people with respect and listening to them and also paying them well. And, I think we have been able to do that. And we, have the first person that we brought on 10 years ago is still working with us. And the turnover rate at our company is practically zero. I mean, we've, lost one or two people throughout the years because they've moved on or moved away. But, pretty much everyone that started with us is still with us, which is pretty wonderful.
you have about 13 tour guides.
13
Yeah.
roughly.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have some that go away for the summers, come back, or people that, actors that find gigs and come back. I love taking people down to Chinatown, and the reason why being that it's, that part of the city is still relatively intact, and it hasn't been totally gentrified. Although they are building new buildings down there now, you still have those great old tenements down there. And many of those streets have been there since they were, initially laid out. So, we take people down to Pell Street and Doyer Street, which is old Chinatown, original Chinatown. And that is where a lot of the Tong Wars, the gang wars, specifically between the Hip Sing and the Ong Leong, took place. They were two Chinese rival organizations, Tongs, what they're referred to. They're, back in China, they would have been called triads. And in China, they were like little mini mafias set up to help overthrow the ruling dynasties in China. When the Chinese came to New York, they set up these organizations called Tongs. And initially, they were meant to help people assimilate, find work. But they eventually got involved in all sorts of criminal activity, racketeering, extortion, prostitution, the opium trade, and they started warring down there for territorial rights.
This was in the 20s, 30s?
This was at the turn of the 20th century. Yeah, so leading anywhere from 1900 leading up into the 1930s, and but some of the major Tong Wars happened definitely around 1909 between those first 10 years of the 20th century. Some of the bloodiest happened, and so this little tiny street, Doyer Street, is this strange little curved street. It's a short little block, and it became nicknamed the Bloody Angle because it was on that block that a lot of those gang wars happened. And what's so cool about that area is that people can see what they see on the surface, which is really cool. But underneath those streets is this maze of tunnels that the Chinese used to, smuggle opium, to literally drag dead bodies through there after their gang fights. They would fight each other down there. They would literally, go down there, and it was so maze-like that they could hide behind, corners and have the element of surprise. And those tunnels still exist there in New York City underneath the streets.
You did a wonderful thing recently inviting Syrian refugees on your tours.
Yeah.
How did that? I think you were on The View.
Yeah, we did an episode of The View, and
Yeah.
the New York Times picked up in the story, which was really cool.
Yeah.
Well, I think, Amber and I were just, we were just pretty disheartened by all that was going on, with the crisis in Syria, and wanted to do something to kind of counteract our feeling of helplessness. And we donate money to organizations that we, hope will help, but it's kind of
you know, you're like, okay, what else can we do that's actually tangible, that's physical, that we feel will make a difference?
And that's the thing, like you think, okay, there's this major crisis going on in the world. We're like two people, what do we do? You know, and then that's kind of when we had like that little aha moment. Oh, do what you do every day, do what you do best. And that is welcoming people to New York City. So we reached out to an organization called ICNA Relief, and they are a Muslim American charitable organization that does disaster relief. And we just presented this to them. They deal with Syrian refugees that are settling in the tri-state area, and we said, look, we would love to offer a free tour to some of your new refugees that are settling in New York to help them to get to know New York. And we thought maybe we'd have like, I don't know, a couple families want to do it. 150 people signed up.
Good.
And we were like, holy crap, 150, how are we going to do this? And so we...
and most of them were based in the New Jersey area, so we had to figure out how to get them into Manhattan from New Jersey and, provide lunch and whatever else they needed for the day.
MTA cards for the day. I mean, it was...
Subway.
Yeah, I mean, we donated our tours, we donated our, our time, but we had to raise money to pay for their transportation from New Jersey into New York, and then for their subway for the day and for lunch. So we started the GoFundMe campaign, and we toured 30 people a day in two groups of 15, so we can keep our groups nice and small for a 5-day period. And it was incredible. I mean, it was an amazing experience. I mean, we met some of the most wonderful people. And you think that we have all these major cultural differences, but when you meet people just on a human level, you realize that we are so much more alike than we are different.
Do they speak English?
No, we had to also get translators.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some spoke a little bit, but no, we had to get translators.
And I expected, they've been through so much. I think I expected a little bit more of a somber, feel to the group, but they're happy to be, here. They're happy to be out for the day in Manhattan.
Yeah.
The kids are just kids, and Luke's doing these and magic tricks for them, and they love it. And the teenagers are kind of like two cool teenagers.
Yeah,
and
they're
the
just
parents,
like every other teenager.
Yeah, it was really, and even though they don't speak English necessarily, you find ways to communicate.
Yeah, and I think the kids were just the greatest part of it. I mean,
And we brought our kids.
We brought our
on a
kids
tour
to
as
meet
well,
their kids, and I mean, Syrian children they're just beautiful. They have dark hair, light eyes. I mean, and these kids were just by our side the whole time. Just you'd be walking, they'd come to you, tickle you, and they just wanted to, they just wanted to play. They were just amazing kids. One of my favorite moments was, and this happened just about every single day. I toured with them every day. When we got to Battery Park to go see the Statue of Liberty, the moment we turned that corner in Battery Park and they saw the Statue of Liberty out in the harbor, the kids all went running to the water's edge to see the Statue of Liberty. I mean, it practically brought tears to our eyes, because we take the Statue of Liberty for granted. We know it's its iconic symbol of freedom and liberty, and
when I go to IKEA, I take a ferry that goes right past the Statue of Liberty, which is so silly, but it always.
And she sits on Facebook on her cell phone.
No, I don't. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
But yeah, as New Yorkers, sometimes you see it every day, and you don't necessarily think about what it means.
Yeah. We also took them. We decided we wanted to take the kids on their first carousel ride, while in New York City. So we were going to be in Central Park. We took them to the Central Park Zoo, and then we took them to the carousel. Now, I didn't realize that the carousel in Central Park was leased by Donald Trump. So we had this kind of dilemma of like, all right, do we take them on this carousel that, is leased by the guy who's just trying to keep them out of here? And then we thought, yes, absolutely, we take them on that carousel. In fact, it's in some way, it was like divine justice that these kids get their first carousel ride on Trump's back, and it was beautiful. I mean, it was really great. York Times picked up on the story, and they published this picture of these Syrian kids on Trump's carousel. And the next day after the Times article came out, we went back with our next group, and the only sign on the carousel that said Donald Trump was taken off. And I asked the guy, well, what happened to the sign? He said, I don't know, we got a call saying take the sign down immediately. A couple days later, a new sign went up that just said carousel. So we might have gotten the president's here, who knows. Great story though. So yeah, and you know, I think that our like goal in all this really shifted as it started, because initially I was like, all right, I want to give them a tour about cultural diversity and immigration in New York. I want them to know why New York is this cultural melting pot, why it's the greatest city in the world, you know. And you know, quickly we learned that these people don't really want to be reminded that they're immigrants. You know, they want to feel normal. You know, they just want a day out with their families.
They just want to enjoy a day with their kids.
Yeah.
You know, they don't, you know,
Yeah.
a lecture on, as interesting as the stories are, you know, they want to run around the boulders of Central Park and,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, that was also cool too. The kids were most drawn to the bedrock in Central Park. Like every time we went in, they would climb all over. It's called Manhattan schist. Climb all over the Manhattan schist, and it was so cool because I watched them and I realized that the thing that they are most drawn to in this city was really, truly the only natural thing in this city was our bedrock, the foundation of this city, the thing that, you know, has allowed us to shoot for the sky in New York City. You know, and that was the thing, the oldest, most natural thing in New York. They found the simplest thing they found the most joy with. It was really cool.
What would you like to talk about? I've been asking questions.
Yeah,
I've just about run out.
Yeah, I mean, God, there's so much to talk about. I mean, we could go on forever.
Go ahead.
Do you want to talk about some of the history of this house?
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
So anyway, we bought this house what year? In
2012.
2012.
5 years ago.
And this was the old Carrigan house. And by the way, just for the record, any historical information that I share on this house came from the Historical Society. So if it is wrong, yeah, my fault. You know, we were looking for a bigger house. We wanted to have a family. And we saw this house, and you know, from the moment we stood outside, you know, I looked up at this back window over here, and this house had been empty for like 30 years. Nobody had ever lived here. I mean, Mary Kerrigan would come 2 weeks out of the summer and just check on the place. She had, you know, neighbors come in and keep an eye on the place, but nobody had really lived here. So, and I just felt the house calling us immediately. I felt this house just saying, please come, like, bring me life, bring me children, like, please, you know, like, give me something to continue keeping this place standing for. Because, you know, there's nothing sadder than an empty house, you know, really. And so the house was built by Ashel Beebe in 1734. And it was, Ashel Beebe was definitely a person of means. And Ashel was I'm not sure exactly what his rank was, but from what I read, he was a high-ranking officer of some sort during the American Revolution. And there's a great story that after the Revolution, there was a big grand ball that they had here in the house, where they invited not only, you know, neighbors from around here that were, you know, loyal to the Sons of Liberty in the Revolution, but they also invited people that had been loyal to the Crown. Because, you know, Ashel Beebe was obviously had a lot of wisdom to know that the war is over. We're going to be have to live with our neighbors here, you know, and let's start right here and right now, you know. So they had this party here in the house for both sides, you know, and they found, I don't know if it was a diary or just the writings of somebody that was related to Asheville Beebe, a young girl that was here, and she wrote about how she danced with a British officer, and that he was so gentle and had this, she had this tender moment with him, and what a revelation that must have been, that here you have this, this young girl who I'm sure was told that the British were pillagers and thieves and rapists and murderers, and here she gets to have this very human moment with, with the enemy, and so it was very cool. And so when we bought the house, it was really, it was pretty
It
run
was
down.
rough.
It was rough, you might
It
say.
had been closed up for years, so there was mildew on the walls, paint was peeling.
We also really made a decision early on that we wanted this house, but we were ahead of budget, and we just, but we wanted it. So, and it was a little over our price range, and we took the time to
It
write.
needed a lot of work.
Yeah, it needed a lot of work.
So we knew we'd need some money,
Yeah.
for the paint job, and
Yeah, but we wrote a letter to Mary Kerrigan, who was the woman that owned the place, and and it was a very honest letter, just saying like, look, we are a young couple that wants to have a family, and we are not looking to fix this up and flip it. We want to build a life here in this house, and it was just a very sincere letter that I think moved her, and she gave us the house at the price that we asked for. So.
we picked up the floor in the dining room. Originally there were, in the dining room and also in this room, the keeping room that we're in now, there were skinny fir flooring that probably went in during the Victorian era, 'cause that was in style at that time. And we weren't sure, because you never know when you start pulling up floorboards what you're going to find. And we just weren't sure. So we weren't originally going to pick up the floors in there. And when we were painting, there was a bookcase that got built in but wasn't original to the house. So we ended up pulling that out. And under that bookcase, you could see a section of the old original floors in the dining room, which are like, 20 inches wide. These boards, they don't make them like that anymore. And so we started, we put the piano on coasters and casters or whatever they're called, and started moving that around and pulling up all the fir floors. And the same flooring was in here, so we started pulling the floorboards up in here, but what was underneath was not the same. So we ended up taking floorboards out of the attic, which we were pulling out anyway to insulate, and we put those boards is what is now down on this keeping room floor.
In colonial days, this wasn't the living room, it was a keeping room?
This was the key. Would have been the kitchen, really.
Yeah.
The kitchen.
Yeah,
But it would have been, the
family-
front two parlors would have been where they, entertained and formally greeted people and hosted people, where the big fireplace was always running. It kept this room warm. They would cook in here. It was where they kept the family. So in a way, it was the living room as well, but not the formal,
As we
when
think
people
of it,
came
yeah.
over. Yeah.
And that room over there is often referred to as the birthing room. That is where people would give birth, and that is where people would also move on when they pass on. This was before we put our relatives in nursing homes and hospices. People died at home, so that room has seen quite a bit as well.
It's great because you can look in these books of, colonial homes, and this layout or something very similar shows up often. You had the center chimney with the fireplace on three sides, the two parlors, the keeping room, and then a pantry and the birthing room. And that, this setup and that style of rooms and flow is often how homes were built.
There's also a secret stairwell as well that leads from this door out of the keeping room upstairs. And I don't know how factual it is, but I spoke to a few old timers that said that these stairwells were often used in case of Indian attacks as another way to get out of the house. They later on would have been used by the servants. But so cool to find these little, hidden spots of the house and parts you never even knew were there.